This is kind of unusual. Eva is actually a guest on her own podcast.
A special guest.
Special guest, Eva Hunter. And we're excited because we've been looking forward to this. Two people that we have gotten to know over the last several years, and just kind of certainly their story. And even more importantly, man, the work that they are doing today. And I just, so glad that you guys made the time and are going to spend a few minutes with us. We need to do it a lot more. But today we've got Joey and Elizabeth Maxon, just really great couple, great story, two people that have done their work and understand what certainly our podcast is about, and can offer a lot of hope to others that are in the midst of crisis, and even moving into kind of long-term recovery. You guys have actually really modeled what it looks like over the long haul, and this stuff is a lifetime. So, man, so glad that y'all are with us. And I, every time, Elizabeth, pardon me, but I have to always introduce Joey as the guy that beat Tiger Woods in the U.S. Open playoff. So for our listeners, Joey was he's an ex-PGA Tour golfer, and I am a wannabe PGA Tour golfer. Yeah, I'm a wannabe putt-putt golfer, but Joey's the real deal. And he and I have actually played golf together. He knows how to play golf. It's amazing. But he loves when I talk about him and his good friend Tiger Woods. And I have to get Tiger Woods in this podcast as many times as possible because we'll do hashtag Tiger Woods, and it's just all about increasing listeners, right? And so Joey, Elizabeth, glad you guys are on the podcast. Yes, absolutely.
Welcome.
It's great to be here, Roane and Eva. Thanks for having us. And just for the record, Roane, I can't believe that you're kicking off the episode with this.
Oh, well, of course, right? Because the title of this episode is going to be like ex-PGA Tour golfer, and then down in little bitty letters it'll say, Tiger Woods' friend. And so we'll have, we may put that in big letters so people will think that man, we got Tiger Woods to come on the podcast, which, he probably could use listening to the podcast. So forward it to him for sure.
We'll do that. But and just let me know when we get to the point of the episode where we clarify all this stuff.
No.
That's probably going to need a solid half an hour at this point just to clarify and set the record straight.
Just to correct the record. No. Man, guys are going to listen to this, especially on the men's side, and man, they're going to be Googling your name. I don't remember this guy beating Tiger Woods.
And then they're going to see that I've only actually played in 4 PGA Tour events, and that I had a very lackluster Corn Ferry Tour for 3 years. And they're going to be like, this is so disappointing. I don't even know if I want to listen to this now.
Well, dude, I
haven't even gotten to the part where I caddied for Joey, which is a whole.
Oh, you did! I did not know that.
So we're just going to make this podcast all about golf, and that's great. Because I want to hear that part. So
yes, me too.
So,
but I will say, what comes to my mind as we're talking like this is the Nick Saban joke. I don't know if you guys have heard it. You probably have, where he talks about he and his wife go back to a class reunion, her class reunion, and they talk to her old boyfriend from high school. And he's now an owner of a gas station or something like that. Successful gas station.
It's okay. Don't want to offend gas station owners.
No, my father was a gas station owner, so that's not offensive at all. But Anyway, he goes on to say, he said, "Well, gosh, if you'd married him, you would be in this small town, and you would be a gas station owner too." And she said, "No, he would have been the Alabama football coach if he had married me."
I have never heard that.
He tells it a lot better, trust me, but it's such a good, yes, it's always the one that they sit beside. Yeah.
Oh, it is. It's that wind beneath our wings, for sure. Certainly, we could talk about this type thing the whole time, but I think our listeners certainly are they're very curious now, so that's a good thing. And man, you guys just have a pretty incredible story, and so we'll just throw it out there. Hey, kind of tell us how you got to where you are, and where you've been. So I'll open it up. You guys dive in.
Wow.
You gonna start?
Yeah, I guess I can start.
Should we tell our origin story, our Roane and Eva origin story, before we dive into?
We can do that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
How we're connected with Roane and Eva. Yeah.
And just to say, for me, it's kind of surreal to be here with you guys because, you said the word hope earlier, and to me, this is like what discipleship looks like. We have so much hope and encouragement and tools and resources from you guys, and now we're able to do that. And in a lot of ways, I don't think we would be able to do that in the way that we do without the work that you guys have done. And so it's surreal for me to be here with you and think about how God is working in all of this. But it was hard for us in our journey, which Joey will share more about, to find couples that were in a similar situation, that were willing to talk about it openly,
right?
That were willing to just have those hard, messy conversations. And it was actually Nate Larkin that sent us to you, because we connected with Nate when we were in Nashville because of Joey Sampson connection. And when we sat down to lunch with Nate and we started talking, he said, I got to connect you with Roane and Eva Hunter. And we were like, who are they? And we'll get you connected. And that was when we decided, we came to the intensive, and that was the beginning of our connection with you guys. And I just want to say, Roane, from my perspective too, your connection with Joey and your influence in his life has been massive. And once again, it's hard to find these people that are real and authentic and really willing to do this messy work. And so we are just really, really grateful for y'all. So thank you.
Wow.
Thank you for saying that. Wow.
Yeah, thank you so much. It means a lot.
It sure does. Try not to cry. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Really.
I got my tissue.
There we go.
There's going to be crying for sure.
There will be.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, this journey for us started really about 5.5 years ago. So I've been in recovery from sex and porn addiction for almost 5.5 years now, and obviously Elizabeth alongside me in that journey. And we spent 15 years of marriage and thought we had a good marriage, and little did Elizabeth know the monster that was lurking under the bed in our relationship. And when that came out in September of 2019, it was kind of like our world was just really put on pause. And we dove headfirst into recovery work. And we were very fortunate. I always tell people we were very fortunate to have great timing, because not long after that was when COVID happened. And my job as a college golf coach kind of was put on pause. And so we had really just several months time period to dive headfirst into recovery and doing recovery work. And I feel like as soon as I got connected initially with an SAA group, and that's a whole nother funny story at Roane. I think we've talked about that, and it was
Yeah,
the classic
yeah,
church basement with the naked light bulbs and
yeah,
the
metal folding chairs.
yeah,
Yeah,
literally right down to like the little kids chairs for Sunday school.
it's great. Leaky
And so
pipes, the whole deal. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And so that was my first exposure. Um, pretty quickly after attending an intensive at onsite, which was probably the best thing I ever could have done early in recovery. And then, so I was in the SAA group and worked the 12 steps within about a 4 to 6 month period and started helping other guys. And I felt the call pretty quickly that, hey, this was going to be something, whether I was doing it professionally or not, it was going to be something I was going to be doing for the rest of my life. Just the being able to expose guys to a little bit of the freedom that I was getting from pornography and sex addiction was an, I won't say an addiction, but a rush and just an amazing feeling to be doing that work. And
Yeah.
here we are 5.5 years later, and it's kind of, that recovery lifestyle and what we discovered early in recovery is something we're really trying to pass on to others as a lifestyle in general.
Yes. Yeah, that's
Oh, yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, it really does become that, right? I was talking about this the other day, just like, so many guys that get plugged in, the thing that you hear them say, it's like, early on, it's kind of like, I got to go to my meeting. But man, over time, you're kind of like me. It's like, man, I can't wait to get to my group.
Exactly.
I love these guys. We do life together. And really, that is the antidote for this thing that we are facing, because the cure for what ails us, it is connection. And so it just does become a way of life, for sure.
For sure. And for the partner as well, right? Because me too, it is the most transparent, authentic people in my life that I walk with. And I've been doing that for almost 35 years. It'll be 35 years in February. So
February the 8th.
Yeah. So what's it been like for you, Elizabeth?
Oh, well, and I was curious if you had that community in place before you guys entered into recovery, or was that something that developed for you too?
Well, there was a community, and we lived in Atlanta at the time, and so when crisis happened, when discovery happened, and there was a group, but what would happen to me is I would go. They didn't have really good guidelines. I would go and I would hear things. I would get so triggered, and then it made me have even more questions. And I stayed in that group, but I would just put my big toe in and take my big toe out, because it was really, really hard. As I continued, though, I did find a group that felt really safe for me. They had really a good structure, a good group of ladies. It was faith-based, and did the 12 steps as well in that group. And then just over time, I've been in lots of different groups, for sure. But I think what has happened over time is that the more I have exposed myself to hard things, to hard stories, the more resilient I am, right? And that really happened maybe around, maybe 25 years ago, where I became very resilient. Nothing triggered me anymore. So, yeah.
I can very much relate to that. I was just thinking about, and to answer your question, obviously from my side of things, Joey knew this was going on for 30 plus years. I mean, his addiction started with some stuff very young.
Yeah, 32 years.
And so he knew this was going on. I literally had no idea.
Yes.
I knew that he would go through kind of like cycles of depression, and it was always so confusing for me. We would have these conversations, and I'm like trying to figure out what is going on. Why?
Exactly.
Why is he struggling so much? And had no idea what was behind all of it. So, as is the case a lot of times when all of that came out, it was like I was, like hit by a Mack truck. I actually had no idea. So, I always say, I feel like the most important thing, and this is where my tears will come, the most important thing that I did, because of course we know there's no manual for like, oh, I just found out my husband's got corn all over his phone and he's got this, there's no like, okay, here's step one, what to do next. And I physically felt like the Holy Spirit like just took me physically and turned me around and walked me back to our bedroom. And I can remember Joey was still this was at Discovery, and this was just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah. And I was doing what any good addict does and just lying about it.
Yes.
Yes, of course.
Right.
Lying, defensive, and there was something in me that knew this is big. Like this is really big and it's really dark. I could feel like the heaviness of it. And so I just felt like I was just led back to our bedroom, and Joey, in his good addict defensiveness, is like, "Where are you going? Why are you walking away?"
Let me finish lying to you.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I'm not done.
Right. And I'm
gosh.
like, done. So I just knew, like, it felt like my whole world was spinning out of control.
Right.
And so I just went straight back to the room and I just got on my knees, and I could not put together any kind of articulate prayer or anything like that. But I just got down on my knees and I said, Jesus, I need you. I do not know what is about to happen, but I need you to show me what to do.
Right.
And I think back on that, and I think it wasn't like some major effort on it was literally me just opening the door and saying, I need you in this because I don't know what to do. And we look back and we say, like, yep, he led us every step of the way. And I had to come back to that a lot of times when things were really hard, or we would take 2 steps forward and a step back and all of that stuff. And I would remember, no, he's still in this with us. And so, I think one of the reasons I've done work for a long time with women just on spiritual growth and development. And I think one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about that is because I feel like that is what kept me afloat.
Yes, me too. Me too.
And that was one of the reasons I was asking you about that, because I feel like all those years of rehearsing the truth of God's love for me and his goodness, and Joey and I remember when we finally got to a place, I was able to come back and re-engage that night. And it wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty. But we started hashing out, and some things started coming out. Not everything came out.
Right.
And my posture was really of like, I just pushed and pushed and pushed. And different women are different ways. But for me in that moment, I wanted it all out.
Yes, me too. Me too. I pushed and pushed and pushed. Yes, me too.
And I just knew, I did feel God can help us get through this, but I've got to know we've got to get it all out. And thankfully for us, it was over a couple of weeks, probably period of time that we got all of that out. But it was messy that night. But I remember we did get to a point that night even of getting down on our knees to pray together. And again, like the prevailing, I think, message to us, even from God at that point, was he's good and he loves us. And if that is true, if we believe that is true,
that's right.
Then and that was what I clung to.
Right.
Because it was very easy for me to feel like I was drowning in all the questions that I had, all the darkness I was feeling. But I just had to keep reminding myself, I know he's good and I know he loves me. And if that is true, then he's going to work in this. He's going to do something with this. And so I think early on we both felt this little nudge towards, I'm not just going to heal you from this, but I'm going to actually use this in a major way in your life. This is going to be part of your purpose.
I love that. Yeah.
And there's even you should share the golf story related to that too, because Joey even had, when he was still playing golf, God was knocking on his door about the future of, you know what I'm talking about?
I do, yeah. I mean, and
Oh yeah,
that
I
very
think I
much
know
goes
this
along
story.
with the Tiger Woods story.
Yeah,
I'm
you're
trying to
playing with.
help you out here.
Thank you. So you're playing with Tiger Woods, and you're having a conversation about him going to treatment. Oh wait, no, that was later.
No, yeah, this is prior. So this is 2001. And to rewind and make the corrections on the story that Roane is telling.
The tall tale.
I had qualified for the 2001 U.S. Open. It wasn't my first PGA Tour event, but it was obviously the first major I had played in. And I think I was, 20. I guess I was 25 at that time, and obviously just in full bloom addiction at that point in my life. And the night before the first round, I'm like super nervous, and I'm staying in a nice hotel, and most of the hotels at that time, of course, have access to pornography, on the hotel TV. And before I know it, it's 6 o'clock in the morning. I think I had an 8:30 or 8:20 something tea time, and I'd been watching porn all night before I'm about to go compete against the best players in the world in a U.S. Open. And for me, it was a point, like a marker, where I said, wow, I really don't have control over this thing. And it just was kind of surreal that here I am and playing in a U.S. Open, kind of have reached, a pinnacle in my career, and I can't even stop myself from doing this to put my best foot forward in a major championship. And so as the story goes, I go out, and in the first round, Tiger plays one of the worst rounds of his major career, and I actually tie him in the first round. Not playing with him, but we actually tie. I think we shot 74. I shot 74. He shoots 74, and this is for him. Keep in mind that he had won the U.S. Open by 15 shots at Pebble Beach the year prior to that. So for him, this is like a major disappointment. And
Terrible.
For me,
What were
like,
you doing?
what was I do? Oh, I don't even know. No telling. But anyway, so as the story, continues, I think Tiger shoots 67 or 68 the next day. I can't remember, but he makes the cut. I shoot 76. I miss the cut. We go our separate ways, and that's the end. That's the true story right there.
Incredible story. So glad that you smoked him in the U.S. Open. It was awesome. But Joey, on just kind of like that piece right there, you're 25, and I mean, you're playing, as you said, I mean, obviously the best golfers in the world, and probably, I mean, certainly top four, maybe premier event of golf, and you're 25, and you stay up all night watching porn, and I know you know this now, but it's like so many guys that I work with, they've never made that connection between the anxiety, the fear, the stress, and how it is so connected to acting out in whatever form that takes. But boy, truly, that story illustrates it perfectly, right? You're in the showcase event of your life, and then you're using this thing that does work for anxiety, but it works. However, it's got a lot of downside in the as it becomes compulsive. All the things that we know. I mean, not that doing it any is okay, but certainly it illustrates just that idea of like, boy, this is so connected to fear, to stress, to anxiety. That's just I do love that story, and I love to embellish it, but it is, I think, one of the best illustrations of how anxiety plays into this, and so many guys don't even know that they're using it to medicate anxiety.
And depression.
And depression.
Yes.
Both and.
Yes, both and. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it's interesting because I mean, you can speak to this, but I think one of the things that has been a big part of Joey's recovery, which he has worked so hard on, which I'm so grateful because I know that is not always the case, is realizing, I think you would have said that you didn't particularly struggle that much with anxiety. Like, I think for so long,
Yeah, because
he
Yes.
had been using that
Yeah.
coping mechanism for so long.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Really shut the anxiety down that anytime there was any little hint of it, he would just self-medicate with porn again. Or,
Right.
so
Yeah.
he coming out of that was like, I never really realized I struggle with anxiety,
Exactly. And most men don't.
Right.
No, it's
Yeah.
amazing.
And,
Right.
and I
Yeah.
didn't realize it until I went and tried to play golf when I was not hooked on porn.
Yeah,
I realized how hard golf really was.
I'm a basket case. Yes, absolutely. Oh yeah, and I think you said it earlier, Elizabeth. You had seen certainly there was these kind of the mood
cycle.
swing. There was
Yeah.
the cycles, and there was depression at times, which is the way it works. It's anxiety and depression go hand in hand. If you've got one, you've got the other, and so. Yeah, you were seeing this as the observer, and us men, especially when it comes to this emotional stuff, we're kind of clueless wonders. We don't know. We're wondering what's going on, and we're clueless about why. And so, even at 25, you kind of, God was knocking on the door. Hey, something's up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other golf-related story where I feel like he was knocking on your door too to give you was, remember the guy that you played
Yeah,
with?
and that was.
This is a really, have you told this story to Ryan?
I can't remember if I told the story to
I think
Roane
you
or
told
not.
me.
Yeah, I
Yes.
was. So the very next year, I was trying to qualify for the U.S. Open again, and I was playing in a local qualifier in Gastonia, North Carolina, and I'm on like the fifth hole. And I'm walking down the fairway, and one of the guys that I'm playing with is kind of like running up to me and, wants to have a conversation. And I'm kind of like, dude, I'm focused here. I'm dialed in. Just like leave me alone. And he starts telling me all this stuff about how he was a former sex addict and porn addict and really his whole life story, and just unloading it on me. And I'm like, why in the world in this moment is this guy telling me this? Like,
Wow.
what's the meaning? But it really was, like, looking back on it now, it really was God tapping me on the
Yes.
shoulder and saying, hey, at some point, this is going to be your story too, and I'm going to do more with this. And we just didn't know that it was going to be 20 plus years down the road.
Right. And Roane, you have a similar. I remember when we lived in Nashville and you went to a bookstore, maybe at Green Hills Mall, and picked up Patrick Carnes, one of his first books.
Well,
Is that right?
It was actually because we were living in Nashville, and it was 1988, and when Ronald Reagan was president, there was it was the Presidential Commission on Pornography, and I mean it's about 2 inches thick, and of course I saw that, and I saw the title of it, and I picked it up, and I started flipping through it, and it's where I saw there's a quote from Patrick Carnes in that in that book about sexual addiction, and boy, I closed that book quick and put it back on the shelf and ran out of that bookstore. Yeah. But it was like.
But it named it for you. It named it
Yes.
for you, which you had no idea. Right.
Yes.
And the
Scared me to
fact that
death.
you're telling that story now says to me, like, God got through to you somehow in that.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
That's what's
Meaningful.
amazing
Yeah.
as we look back and I mean, we have lots of stories for both of us of like just things God did. And I think part of, the nonprofit that we're running now is called Restoried. And I think part of that is, yes, there is this restory that is happening for our future, but there's also a restory that's happening for our past.
Yes.
We look back and how do we tell the story of, because Joey could say, well, my life sucked and I had all these problems and all these things and no wonder I did this and yeah, I'm better now, but instead he can look back and say, God was in that the whole
The
time.
whole time.
I just, I saw, yes, my addiction was keeping me from him, but that didn't mean that he wasn't breaking through in all these different moments and trying to, rescue me and pull me out and prepare me for what was
Right.
coming. So
Right.
those
Amen.
are the stories that
Yeah.
are really, I think that's been a big part of our recovery is to go back and retell some of
Yes.
the stories in a different light, in the light of God's love and his truth and his goodness. And so that's one of those that we go back to is like, wow, God, even then, he
Was
was
plucking
preparing.
him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, God,
Yeah.
God, God was present in the chaos, right? He
yes,
always is.
yes.
Yeah, and it's taken me a long time to come to grips that God was using that part of my story really just to get me here, just to be working with Elizabeth and working to help other men. But the this work justifies all of that, in my opinion. And at this point, I couldn't be more thrilled to be doing what we're doing, and especially doing it together.
Well, and there was another moment that reminds me too of another moment like early in recovery, probably a few months in even. I mean, we were still in the thick of stuff, but I had seen already because Joey had been to on-site. He had already started going, doing group work, doing counseling work. I mean, he was already becoming a totally different person.
Yes. Right.
And I remember we went out to dinner one night and we're just kind of processing through some things, which has been a really important part of recovery for us. I think doing our own work, but then from really early on, like coming together and talking about what our individual work was looking like. And
Right.
I remember saying to Joey, if I was given the choice to go back and to before, everything hit the fan and erase your addiction and
Right.
like you'd have no addiction, but our life was the same as it was before. I
Right.
would not do it because
Same.
already our marriage and our relationship and our intimacy, our connectedness was so beyond anything that I had ever experienced before. When we, like Joey said, we would have said we had a good marriage. I mean, we had just started leading a marriage group at our church like 2 weeks before I
Yeah.
found out about all this. So
Yes.
Oh yeah, of
it's
course.
fine, but it wasn't. I mean, what it's been on the other side of it is infinitely better. It's like more than we could ever hope or imagine, just like,
Right.
promises, but we've actually experienced that. And I think that's why we feel so compelled to try to help. And
Yeah.
I know it feels like a risk to couples to like do the work.
Yes. I
There's no
know.
promises, there's no guarantees, but just like we can look at you guys and say, but they did it, and look what God did. So
Yes.
we hope people can look at us and walk with us and say, if God could do it in their life, then He could do it in our life too. So,
Right.
Amen.
Right. Right.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Well,
And
go ahead.
for me personally, as and this was this past Sunday at our church, and the message was on hope, and it was such a great message. But what really spoke to my heart, and I have carried it all week, and told many, many others as well, was that our pastor used the words, "We're saved," and I was saved at 8 years old as a young girl. Then we're sanctified, and then we are now glorified, meaning we give God all the glory for what we've been through. But it takes suffering to be sanctified. And so I don't know, that just really spoke to my heart that it grew me up going through what I went through. It grew me emotionally because I had a lot of anger, I had a lot of rage, even before I knew everything. I had anger. I wouldn't say rage. Once Roane confessed everything, the rage came, and I was angry with God, right? But I was also so spiritually immature that I really couldn't see. I hear a lot in you, Elizabeth, that you did have a really strong foundation in the Lord, right? And that you could cling to His promises, right? But my faith was just not that deep at the time. It is today, and I certainly would never trade anything for what we went through. I love that we went through what we went through, that I got to see my own junk, right, which I probably would have never dealt with, ever, if I hadn't gone through what I went through.
Oh, I love that. It's so beautiful, and even just what you shared of the salvation, sanctification, glorification, and to feel like we can be completely. I feel like so many times we just get stuck on the salvation.
Right.
Check now.
Exactly. Right.
So much.
And he's still sanctifying me, trust me.
Yes.
Trust me. He's still sanctifying me. I'm still, sometimes, the fire is not as hot today. The fire is not as hot. But
I love that. And I also love the beauty of hearing how God met you where you were.
Yes, I
and
know.
how He met me where I
Where
was.
you were. Yes.
Because I had already worked through a lot of my junk. Not all my junk. I'm still working through my junk. But that's one thing Joey and I talk about a lot. I think I had been married prior to Joey and I being married. I had already been through a failed marriage. I was carrying a lot of my own shame. I come from a very broken family. So a lot of my stuff was just out there, and I'd already had to work through it. I'd already had to face, I had already received, buckets and buckets and buckets of grace for myself.
Right.
So I really do believe when this happened, I had such a well in me that I'd received over time that I was able to dip into that for Joey. And I think God just knew, like, because there were moments, especially early on, where I was like, God, why did you wait 15 years of marriage for this to come out? Like, why couldn't you have experienced this earlier? And in a lot of ways, I felt Him responding to me by saying, you weren't ready. Like, I don't know if I could have handled it a year earlier or 5 years earlier.
Yeah.
And then to be able again to restory it and say, well, thank goodness it didn't go another 15 years.
Right. Yes.
Absolutely.
For us.
Right.
It's like for you guys to know that assurance that God meets us right where we are and gives us
Exactly. Yeah.
So Elizabeth, kind of like one of the things I hear as you share is just, and we talk about this often, and certainly I know that there's probably people that are going to listen to our podcast that maybe, aren't walking with God, don't know Jesus. I don't know. However, and we get this all the time when we're asked to be guests on, or, some speaking thing or whatever. It's like, the faith-based part. And, the thing of it is the couples that we see that actually not only survive this stuff, but have a marriage that thrives. I mean, the God piece is just, it's foundational, right? And I'm not saying that like somehow if you go through this and that's not a part of it that you won't make it, but I don't know how you do, and just moving into long-term marriage. I mean, beyond the betrayal and infidelity and addiction stuff, marriage is just hard anyway. It's a cat and a dog, thrown in a dryer. Like, holy cow! And just without the God piece, it's just so foundational. And so, and I know you were. I mean, as you said, you already engaged in your work, and I mean, you were already kind of doing ministry work when everything kind of came out, right?
I was, yes. And again, I think that was all part of God's provision for me to just prepare me for what was coming. And I do think, we joked when Joey and I got married. I said, you don't know what you're getting into. This is what I told, because here I am, my family, like if I drew my family tree for y'all, it would be, so I would have to draw it out and explain it. It's super confusing. I had lots of, just childhood trauma, and then I had a failed marriage, and which I take a large responsibility for, in that failed marriage. And I was a mess. Like prior to, I was just starting to open myself up to God's healing in my life. And really, even though I had loved Jesus my whole life, I had grown up in the church like you, Eva, but I very much still was trying to construct my own life. I very much was trying to be in control, and I'm, productive, achievement oriented, all of those things. And I was like, yes, God, I know you're there to help me if I need help, but I got this.
Right.
Right, until it all fell apart, and
Yeah.
I had come to the end of myself, and so, which was a gift, as we know, to come to the end of ourselves. So, but I was kind of like coming out of that when Joey and I met, and so I would say to him all the time, like, you don't know what you're getting into. And then I would look at Joey and say, his parent, like, tell him your family's like on the outside.
Yeah,
It's
no,
like,
my parents are still married, been married 52 years, and from the outside everything is great, and that's just how my family wanted it to look, but on the inside there wasn't the hard conversations, the difficult things, weren't brought to the surface and dealt with. So I had a lot more from that standpoint lurking under the surface, ready to erupt, that I was covering up with my addiction. All the way through. But yeah, I'm very much with you, Roane, on the idea that I just don't know how recovery can be done successfully without God at the forefront. And I'm very much a metaphor guy. And so when I'm doing my work with other men, one of the metaphors I use all the time, and I adjust it accordingly to what their age is. I'll say, it's God kind of plays the role of, and this is where the age comes in. If it's a younger guy, I'll say LeBron James. If it's an older guy, I say Michael Jordan. I'll say God is kind of like the LeBron James or the Michael Jordan on your recovery team. Like, he's gonna touch the ball. Like, there's gonna be, he's gonna touch the ball on offense. He's gonna play defense. He's an integral part of what you're doing, and it's without that person in there, without him there, it's gonna be very difficult to be successful.
Yes. And so, Joey, how did you help Elizabeth heal?
That's a great question. Number one, I gave her space. I think was important, and I think communication. I think open communication was very important. And I tried my best. I mean, as we know, in those situations when a guy unloads all of his stuff, for me, I felt very light. This is something, I mean, Elizabeth was the first one to ever know about this addiction that I've been carrying for 32 years. Yeah. And so I can remember one of the first nights, that everything had come out. We were very fortunately staying with some good friends of ours, and the guy that, whose house it was that we were staying with, he took me to Smoothie King to grab a smoothie. And I can remember, like, thinking, wow, this is great. Like, I felt so light, and like I'd unloaded this thing that I'd been carrying for so long. And Elizabeth is, like she said, laying on the side of the road after being hit by a truck. Right. So yeah, I think giving her time and space, also communicating well about what I'm doing in my recovery, and just overall communication in general. And a whole lot of empathy. Just trying I was not a very empathetic person coming into recovery, and I had to learn it on the fly very quickly. And I'm still learning to this day, and I always will be. But I think that was a huge part of it, was moving towards her in an empathetic posture.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
I would agree, but I would also say humility was one of the biggest things for me. Like, there was true humility from Joey, the empathy piece, I guess this is related to that too, but you talked about anger and rage and all the feelings that we feel, Eva, I had all those, and I I have journals, stacks of journls that, I let it rip, and I would read them,
Yeah.
I would write them, and then I would read them to him.
Yes.
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean, in a very
Yes.
animated way.
So
And
much
Yes.
fun.
Yes.
and so, but
Uh,
And so how did he handle this? That would have created shame, I'm sure, because that's what happens
well, and
with
it's
all of us.
yes, well, and I would unload a lot of that. And you can speak to what the experience was for you. On my side, that was where Joey just he let me do that. And he would say, "I'm so sorry. I'm
Yeah.
so sorry." Um, and I know that wasn't easy for him
Right.
to hear, like
Right.
how this had affected me and
Yeah.
all the feelings I was feeling and all of that, and how it had affected our kids and all of that. But he would be he very early became a safe place for me to unload that,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
that was a big part of it, I feel like, too.
Yeah, and coming into recovery, I always use the phrase that my foot was on the starting line. I had had about a 6-year period of like just misery where I had kind of thought about taking it to the pastor at one of our churches that we were at in Charlotte when we lived there at the time, and I didn't, and I just I just kind of had lost hope that I was ever gonna like be better, like that I was gonna be able
Uh-huh.
to tell anybody about it, or find any healing from it. So I was very much like, when discovery happened for us, I was very much ready to go and kind of do whatever it was. There was a lot of hard
Yeah.
things ahead, but I think God really prepared me and put me in that position just
Right.
to have the willingness to do whatever it was going to take to get better.
Yes.
Yes. And I think too, we talked about our families earlier, and I talked about how messy my family is. But I want to say too, my family is also very healthy in a lot of ways at this point.
Yes.
I mean,
Good.
it's not your typical looking family, but
Right.
because there was a lot of hard stuff for us to have to, we are very familiar with counseling. We very much, have open conversations. We wrestle through things. We work through things. And so I think I had seen that things can be messy and not perfect, and there can be redemption in that. There can
Yes.
be, and so I knew the possibility of that
Uh-huh.
when I was walking
Uh-huh.
through this with Joey, because of what
Yeah.
I walked through in my own family.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's awesome. I
so,
just had a new awareness as y'all
yeah.
shared. I had never really thought that I too was the first person Roane ever told
Mm,
about his sexual addiction. I was the first. It makes me cry.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't handle it well by any means, but he never wavered. He never wavered in his recovery. He immediately got into therapy, and I'm sure I was pushing too. You have a problem. You've got to get a problem. Not looking at me at all, for a long time. But he never wavered, and I think that's what created a lot of safety for me. He didn't always react well to my anger, my rage. His would get defensive and all the things because he really was doing the work, right? So he was advocating for himself, trying to, and I was just couldn't hear any of it. I couldn't see any of it. Yeah, but I'm grateful for a good man.
Mm.
Yeah,
Ah,
as
wow.
I know
me,
you are
Thank you.
too, Elizabeth.
me too. Me too.
Yeah.
They don't get any better than Roane and
They
Joey.
don't. They don't. I totally agree. A man in recovery who loves the Lord. Oh my goodness, that's the
mean,
best there is.
yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
It's the
It's
whole
fully
pillar.
known.
Yes.
Fully
One of
known.
our little mantras early on, I think we read something in a book or something, and we kind of switched it up a little, was, it's less important that everything be fixed and more important that nothing be hidden. And so we,
Oh,
That's awesome.
we
that's
learned
so
like
good.
things are going to be messy, and we're going to have hard conversations, and,
Yeah.
Yes.
people, like the bear hunt, you can't go over it, can't go under it, can't go
Uh huh.
around it, you got to go through it.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and we still struggle. Like just this week, like we've just gone back for a little check-in and counseling because there's like some other patterns that have come back up that we're like,
sure.
okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We understand.
Yeah, we get it.
By
the way. What did you say?
I said it's all my fault, by the way. I'm taking full credit.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I know it is.
There's no doubt. Absolutely. Yes. So, man, we could just keep this conversation going. And we definitely, we're going to have you guys back on because
more to talk about.
There's so much more to process and talk about. And I think, you guys, your story it offers, again, I always say we're hope peddlers, right? Mm-hmm. We're just like, okay, yeah, it's bad. It's going to be hard. It's not going to be quick. It's not going to be painless. However, if you do your work, if both people go all in, it's amazing what can happen. And I just, one of the things, Joe, you and I talked about it, but boy, I love the name of you guys, your ministry, what you're doing, Restoried.
Me too.
That's because, as you said earlier, Elizabeth, kind of going back and reframing our stories is so important. And part of that, I think, is like, knowing that, God was present in the chaos. He's always been there, right? And he's always going to be there. And as we go back and as our friend Jim Kress says it, and we stole it, we go back collecting the dots, connecting the dots, and correcting the dots. I think part of that correction is kind of the restory of my life, for sure.
I didn't even realize that was Jim, Roane. I've been giving you credit for that all this time.
Okay, yeah, no, it was me. Jim don't know what he's. I taught Jim. He stole it from me, actually. Yes.
Joey he's also stolen the cats and the dogs.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
Most of my vocabulary, the good and the bad, comes from Roane. So
the good and the bad.
That's great. Oh yeah. Yeah, Eva was giving me grief last night. I cooked salmon, as I call it, because phonetically, that's the way it's spelled. And I was like, no, you're mispronouncing it. And so Siri corrected me, and she did say it's salmon. But I'm like, everybody else is wrong. I'm right. Oh, gosh.
We do quote y'all all the time. We do intensives. I feel like 50% of the things we say, we're like, okay, this is another thing from Roane and Eva. But my favorite from Eva that we got from, and there's nothing new under the sun, but the whole, the story in my head that I got from
yes.
I use that all the time. And it's that goes back to Restoried again,
usually
too.
On me.
It's way better if I say
I know the story in my head. Right.
Oh yeah. Oh gosh.
Oh.
So man, just as we wrap up, like I say, this isn't an end of a conversation. This will be an ongoing conversation with you guys. So if somebody, some of our listeners want to get in touch with you guys, find out more about your ministry, tell us the best way.
Yeah,
the intensives. Tell us about that.
Yeah, Restoried.org is our website, and that's probably the best connecting point for people to get us. And
we're also on Instagram, which Joey knows nothing about because
by design.
Me too.
It's Restoried.life on Instagram too. So,
but yeah, we do couples intensives. One of the areas that I'm really passionate about is getting men outdoors, and very much after the deer camp model, I have started doing what we call wilderness weekends.
Nice.
And we've got access to an amazing property here in South Carolina that we use that's on Lake Jocassee, and I ran one of those in mid-November, and it was an amazing success. And once again, just allowing a forum for guys to share their stories and be an authentic community, which is such a core principle of what we are doing. But yeah, I think we've run 4 marriage intensives now, which is crazy. Just had one in early January. And it's crazy. We started this thing early last year and officially kicked it off July 1. And we've got 4 employees now and potentially 2 interns now, at least 1 intern. So it's
so great.
Awesome.
God is taking it and doing things with it. Yeah, that we imagine. And yeah, we've got a lot going on, and you're right. This is, hopefully going to be an ongoing conversation, because there's just stuff happening every day. That's crazy.
And please know that so much of what Joey's describing and what's happening with us has been inspired and encouraged by the work that you guys are doing.
Absolutely.
I mean, to me, this is what the kingdom of God looks like.
I think copy is copied.
Oh yeah,
love it.
As I always say, I have the spiritual gift of plagiarism. Yes, no therapist ever had an original thought. We stole it from somebody else. Yeah, if we had an original thought, we'd probably go into a coma or something. But we get it. It's like that's what we do.
Well,
so,
when we did your guys' intensive, I mean, everything about it was so great. So why would we change anything?
We get it.
Yeah. Imitation, greatest form of flattery. Thank you.
And
yes.
we learned from Eli Machen and Jim Cress. So I want to give them a lot of credit. We
stole everything from them.
We're just passing it on down the line.
We're just passing it on. Pass on the good stuff. Yes, advancing the kingdom. Advancing the kingdom.
Yeah. That's right.
We
if it's working.
Your generosity in that. We really do.
Oh yeah. Well, thank you guys.
It's inspired us to be generous too.
Well, thank y'all for taking the time and joining us. And as you said, you guys are going to be you're going to be back on, maybe regular guests. Maybe we'll host a live call-in show. Ben's going to figure out how we do that.
That would be great.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So anyway,
that would be very much needed.
Just so great sitting with you guys. Man, thank you for being on here with us.
Yeah.
And thank you for
having
being
us.
And thank you guys for being on the journey with us. Yes.
Yeah. All right.
God bless.
Yeah.
All right, y'all.
To God be the glory. Bye.